seated, ladies and gentlemen. You sung beautifully, well worth the wait. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Anthony Garcia, Minister of Education, the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, Minister of Works and Transport, all other cabinet ministers and members of parliament and senators, members of the media, people of St. Augustine, Tunapuna, and neighboring communities, members of our audience, viewers and listeners. Good evening and welcome to Conversations with the Prime Minister. I am Dr. Nian Gadsby-Dolly, Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, and I will be your moderator for today's conversation. To our live audience and those tuning in to CTV, the C News Live Facebook, and various radio stations, welcome to Conversations with the Prime Minister. Tonight, we are at St. Augustine Secondary School for the third in a series of national conversations led by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley to discuss issues of national importance to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. As our nation presses forward through challenging times, the government of Trinidad and Tobago wants to engage with you, the citizens, to share pertinent information on our country's development and hear your thoughts, your ideas, and your questions. Earlier this year, we began this series with our first conversation held at the Maloney Amphitheatre in February. Our second conversation was held in Point Fortin in July. At both events, roughly 400 persons and thousands more at home joined us to hear critical updates in the areas of national security, energy, social development, and more, and to ask the Prime Minister about the government's short-term and long-term plans. We have come here today to St. Augustine to hear your views, your questions, and to get your feedback. We encourage you to engage with our panel in a positive way as we aim to create meaningful dialogue between government and citizens. This is how we work together to develop Trinidad and Tobago's true potential. Please welcome our panel tonight, Minister of Education, Anthony Garcia, to the extreme right, Minister of Works and Transport, Rohan Sinanan, to the extreme left, your right, and of course, seated between them, someone who needs no introduction, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley. I now welcome Minister Anthony Garcia to address the audience.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. The Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, my fellow panelists, Mr. Rohan Sinanan, members of Cabinet, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by saying how happy I am to be here tonight to join with our Prime Minister in having a conversation with the general public. In my capacity as Minister of Education, I think it is important for me to relate to the general public in a timely manner what we have been doing in the system of education over the last 2 years. When I came into office as Minister of Education, I was reminded of the government's policies with respect to education. And our education system, in keeping with the policies of the People's National Movement, which are now considered as official government policy, our education system is based on 3 important pillars: access, quality, and inclusion. First of all, we are determined to ensure that we deliver a high-quality education to our nation's children, from early childhood right on to tertiary. We have to ensure that our children, all those who are of school age, have access to this quality education that we are determined to provide. And thirdly, we want to ensure that no one is left behind. We are aware of the fact that many of our students suffer certain challenges. And in recognition of these challenges, we must put things in place so that we can give the support that is needed to these children. With this in mind, one of the first tasks that was undertaken by this ministry was to engage in a national consultation on education. And that consultation was held in February 2016, where we engaged all our stakeholders. It was an exercise that ran over 3 days. We had one consultation in the north, one in the south, and another in Tobago. And there we heard the views of every stakeholder in education and members of the general public. And out of this consultation, we were able to formalize and formulate an education policy that is now before Cabinet, and hopefully in a matter of weeks it will be presented to Parliament. But arising out of this consultation, a number of initiatives have been put in place. The consultation focused, in some cases, on the Education Act. We had a review of the Education Act, and also we looked at the Concordat. Now, as you know, when we talk about the Concordat, very often a number of people raise eyebrows. But this is really an instrument that was put in place to ensure that the denominational schools can have a stake in education and they can maintain the religious character of their schools. On many occasions, the Concordat has come into question, and this is why one of the reasons that we included the Concordat in our consultation was to hear the views of the general public. We also looked at school maintenance and repair. Of course, when we came into office, we found that many of our schools were in a dilapidated state. Many of our schools needed proper maintenance and repair. In fact, most of our schools, in fact, a large number of our schools, more than 150 of our schools, are in a state of disrepair because they are old. I prefer to say they are aged. So we looked at that. Of course, if we are to deliver education, we must look at curriculum. And we have been doing a lot of work where curriculum reform is concerned, and right now, before Cabinet, we have a report on a task force that was appointed to look into the curriculum at the level of the early childhood and also the primary school. We know that if we are to succeed in education, if we are to deliver the type of education that will ensure that our students benefit, we must include our stakeholders. And one of our valued stakeholders is our parents. And therefore we looked at parenting in education, the part that parents can play, so that we can encourage that association with our parents. And of course, we looked at violence and indiscipline in our schools. I will talk a little more about indiscipline and violence in our schools and what we have done to curb that scourge that entered in our education system and the gains that we have been able to make over the last 2 years where this is concerned. One of the things that we set about to do and to reform as we look at the examination regimes was the continuous assessment component that formed part of the SEA exam. We were cognizant of the fact that the CAC was providing a burden on the shoulders of our students. We have had many concerns of parents who felt that this was an unnecessary imposition on the shoulders of our students. And of course, our teachers were also complaining. We listened to the views of our stakeholders. In particular, we listened to the views of the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, the representative body for teachers, and we also held discussions with the National Association of Parent Teachers. And arising out of the views expressed, we decided that we were going to call a halt or put a halt to the continuous assessment component. When that decision was relayed to the general public, it was met with applause, it was met with satisfaction, because it was generally felt that here it was that an effort was being made to make life much easier for our students who are toiling in the primary schools as they prepare for the SCA exam. Towards this end, in our discussions, we looked at the SCA exam and what value that exam is being placed on the children, or what value our students are deriving from an exam as this. The SCA exam has been open to a lot of criticisms by a number of persons, but it is an exam that we found over the years to be necessary because it is a placement exam. And once you have a placement exam, then there will be that high level of competition. What we need to do, however, is to make the exam more student-friendly so that our children would not be required to have long hours of toil while they prepare for this exam. Recently, Cabinet took a decision that effective 2019, the date when children will be writing the SCA exam will be moved from May, which is usually held during the first week of the third term, to March, which will be the last week of the second term. And this decision was taken after a lot of deliberation and consideration. It was felt that this exam, when it was held in May, posed some unnecessary burdens on the administration of the exam. The Caribbean Examination Council has the overall responsibility of administering this exam. And of course, you would know even this year we had some difficulties with respect to the exam itself. But more than that, even at the level of the Ministry of Education, when our teachers and those persons who were charged with the responsibility of ensuring that the placement of the exam, the placement of the students in this exam was done in such a manner that will allow our students to have their results before the school term came to an end, that caused a rush. It was felt that if this examination is brought forward, it will give much more time in the correction of the scripts, but more than that, it will allow the students who write the exams at the end of the second term to be adequately prepared for their entry into the secondary school. And many of the activities that those children had to forego when the exam was held in May, those activities would be able to be continued in the primary school. But while we talk about the SCA exam, we recognize that there are some drawbacks to this exam. While we laud and we appreciate the outstanding performances of some of our students, in fact of many of our students in this exam, there are still a number of our students who are performing below standards. It has been shown that a large number of our students perform very well in the exam. But there are too many students who are scoring below 30%. While previously, those children were sent to the secondary school, and the principals of those schools have been consistent in their reports to us and their complaints to us about children entering the secondary system unable to read or unable to write properly. We thought that something must be done also to ensure that the students who score below 30% should be given an equal opportunity to improve themselves. We therefore embarked on two initiatives. One we refer to as the Form 1 initiative, where students, although they performed under 30%, but those whose age was above 13 years, were allowed to proceed to the secondary school. But at the level of the secondary school, we decided to put things in place that will assist them as they move forward. The curriculum that they will be exposed to will be reformed. Teachers have undergone training to ensure that they can deal adequately with their students. They will be monitored closely, and in the areas of numeracy and the literacy, there will be that concentration so that those students will have a better idea of how to read and how to write. In addition to this, the students who are below the age of 13 are allowed to return to the primary school, where they are given special treatment that will allow them to perform much better. And this is one of the initiatives that we have embarked on. Another important initiative that we feel very proud about is our MOVA Laventille initiative, in which 25 schools in the MOVA Laventille area have been identified. And these schools are given special treatment. This initiative is based on 4 pillars: literacy and numeracy being one, school discipline, enhancing school discipline another, parental infrastructure and aesthetics third, and the fourth one, parental involvement. The responses that we have been receiving from those persons, either the parents or the teachers or the students themselves, those responses have been very encouraging, and therefore we find that our students are on the road to recovery. These are some of the initiatives that we have embarked upon, and therefore when this meeting will be open to question time, and I will be able to expand a little more. I'm sure you'll have some more questions to ask. So at this point, I will close. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Garcia, for that update. We move right along, and Minister Sinanan will now address the audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gatsby Dolly. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Cabinet colleagues, Chairman of the various corporation, councillors, members of the community of Tunapuna, viewers and listeners on the national of the Trinidad and Tobago, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Transportation and infrastructure has to be the bedrock for any developing society. If we are to develop this country where we would like to see it, the drivers must be the infrastructure for proper competitiveness and productivity. At the Ministry of Works and Transport, we have embarked on some major development programs which we feel will assist us in taking this country forward. We have divided the portfolio into 2 categories in terms of the major development projects and the community projects. What I would like to do this afternoon is to give you a brief overview of some of the projects that we would have embarked on for the fiscal year 2016-2017 and what is expected to continue into 2017-2018. Some of the major projects coming out of the People's National Movement Manifesto, which is now a government policy, started with us looking at the continuation of the Point Fortin highway from San Fernando to Point Fortin. I am happy to report that the government was successfully able to recover $1 billion from the OAS contractor. That money have been put towards the completion of the highway. And immediately we started off at the start of the reconstruction. We had 3 packages out for tender. All 3 packages were taken up by local contractors. Because unlike before, what we started to do is to cut the packages into sizes where local contractors were able to participate. This was not done before, and what you found is that foreign contractors were the only one qualified to handle these mega projects. 2 days ago, 4 more packages closed off the tendering process, and we expect within the next 30 days, the evaluation should be completed and 4 new packages will start. At the end of October, we'll have 5 more packages coming out on that highway. That will bring the highway from San Fernando to Point Fortin and La Brea. With that piece of construction down in the south, within the next 2 weeks, we'll be turning the sod for the Manzanilla, the Waterfield to Manzanilla highway. That is another major project. And in 2016-2017, we were able to achieve that dream that just a couple of months ago, people were saying that was a pie-in-the-sky project. Another major project we were able to achieve is the Curep Interchange. We all know the history of that project. That project just was not getting off the ground. And I'm happy to say that we have made an award for that project last week. What is significant, however, is on that project, we were able to come in close to $150 million below the last tendered price. All major projects now, because of the method that we are using, competitive tendering, and making the package in such a way that local contractors could now compete with one another, what we find happening is the prices that these projects are coming into, the citizens of this country are significantly benefiting from the reduction in price. Another major project that I'm happy to announce that we would have accomplished in 2016-2017 is the much talked about Moruga First Class Road. I'm happy to say that next week we'll be turning the sod on that project. That's a major project for the Moruga area, which will lead us to the fishing port that is earmarked for that region. I'm also happy to announce that the Toko, the new road to Toko, we have in our possessions now the route alignment, and the consultant is about to present to the Cabinet and the Infrastructure Committee the new route alignment. Once we get the all clear with that, that is another project earmarked for 2018. Also, there's a port in Toko. We always heard about that port in Toko that could bring Tobago and Trinidad much closer together. The consultant is almost finished with the conceptual designs, and we expect that port to be tendered out by December of this year. Yet again, another major achievement. The Diego Martin interchange. For years we have been hearing about that Diego Martin interchange. Well, the consultant had given me the assurance, again, by December of this year, that project will be ready for tender. So we expect boots again on the ground in 2018. We have a lot of, those are the big major projects. However, there are a lot of small contractors who keep complaining that they can't participate in these big projects. So under the Pure unit, in 2016, the Pure unit was able to do 125 projects. What we found when I went into the ministry in November is that there were a lot of bills that was pending from 2014, some from as far back as 2013, 2015. So we could not do as much work because we had to honor some of these bills. 125 projects is a lot. However, in 2017, we have already costed 300 projects. Now, these projects, we expect the smaller contractors to benefit significantly from them because the larger contractors will be taken up with the mega projects. So we expect most of the small contractors to at least have the opportunity to put their equipment to work. But I must say, gone are the days when we'll be giving out contract. What we're trying to do now at the ministry is we will have competitive tendering. So you might be a big contractor, you will be a small contractor. What we want is value for money. Because for too long, the citizens of this country have been paying a hell of a high price for jobs that is done in the private sector for at least 50% of the cost. And I think with the shortage of funding, we need to do more with less. However, there are opportunities for everyone. In our drainage department, we recognize the weather pattern that we are getting now. And there was some challenge, I must say, getting this department up and running. But I'm happy to say that the drainage department was able to achieve 118 projects. All indications from the drainage department, that is a significant amount of projects to achieve in 1 year, especially when you have a shortage of funding, when we do have challenges with funding. What the drainage department has assured me that they will complete all those projects by the end of this fiscal year, meaning by the next 2 to 3 weeks. And the drainage program is going to start from January next year. We're not going to wait for the rains and June and July to start these projects. From January, because they have already costed and earmarked all the projects that they want to get done in 2018. And my intention is to work with them so by January, we will start these projects. What we expect then is that the projects will cost a lot less because we will use a lot more competitive tendering in the drainage program. Under the highways program, the highways division was able to achieve 111 projects. Some of these projects might be smaller projects, but again, in the highways division, what we found is that with competitive tendering, the cost of road paving have gone down almost 50% in some instances. Because we have what we use now is that we don't do selective tendering with 3 and 4 contractors. We bring all the contractors who can pave, put them on the job, and what we find is the competition level have driven the price down where just recently we had funding for 4 projects. We were able to do 6 projects because of the price that we got. And that is the way the ministry is operating now. And I really do hope we could continue on that vein. Under the Ministry of Works and Transport, there are a lot of other state enterprises that fall within our purview. One of them is the PTSC. Public transportation is key if we have to achieve that efficiency that we want. I'm happy to say that I've been working with the board of the Public Transport Corporation, and I'm quite satisfied that they understand where we want to take public transportation in Trinidad. I'm excited about an app that they're talking about where you can track your bus, where it is, what time it's coming, and what we're trying to do is to get technology to drive the public transportation. This year they were able to get 35 new buses. 15 of them were tailored for Tobago to suit the needs of Tobago, and those should be in within the next month or so. 15 goes to Tobago, the rest stays in Trinidad. And in 2018, a little birdie told me that we would get the funding for 100 new buses. What that will do, it will help the fleet at the PTSC, and I think that is the beginning of a new public transportation in Trinidad and Tobago. If I'm to look at the airport, in Tobago, in 2018, we are looking in terms of the new Tobago airport. And I'm happy that the Ministry of Works will be driving that process. Now, there's so much more. Yeah, sorry, I was just correct. It's not a new airport. It's a terminal building. Now, there's so much more that I can speak about that from the Ministry of Works and Transport, but we might need 2 days. So I will just cut for now, pass back to the chairman, and then we take the questions as we go along.
Thank you so much, Minister Sinanan, for that update. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I now invite Prime Minister Dr. Rowley to address the audience.
Thank you very much, Minister Gadsby Dolly. A very good night to you, fellow citizens, those of you who have come out here in such large numbers, and those of you who are listening to us at home. Permit me to acknowledge the presence of members of the cabinet, other members of the government, former members of government. I see a distinguished member, Mr. Eddie Hart and Mr. Joan Yule Williams. Chairman, councillors, but generally, people of Trinidad and Tobago, a very good night to you all. I just recognize that it's only a few days away from the 2nd anniversary of the day when you put this government in office. We had not celebrated the date. Maybe tonight we could consider tonight as the celebration of the 2nd anniversary of your effort. And permit me, ladies and gentlemen, to make a distinction. Because something happened on the 7th of September 2015 when you went to the polls at a very difficult time in our country's history. You went to the polls to choose a government when things in the country had not been going the way you thought they should go. So if today there's a poll in this country that says that some people who are not happy with the way things are going, just remember that the reason why you changed the government in 2015 is because you were not satisfied with the direction that the country was going then. But what you did then, maybe you had not noticed. But let me tell you how I received the mandate that you gave me. You gave me a mandate to occupy the office of Prime Minister in this country because you chose a leader who would do what had to be done in a difficult situation to ensure that this country has the best opportunity to come out of that difficult situation. I accepted that mandate with humility, saying to you that I will be a Prime Minister for all of Trinidad and Tobago, and I intend to keep that. And, of course, you did not elect me to try to be popular. Because populist politics is what got us to where we are today. You did not elect me to try to make myself the most popular person in Trinidad and Tobago by saying, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that. Because the circumstances were such that even if I wanted to do that, it is not there for me to give you this and give you that. Let's understand that up front. So even if I wanted to conduct public business in the Prime Minister's office like the last Prime Minister, the means and the wherewithal are not available for that kind of politics and that kind of leadership. But what the circumstances call for is a recognition that you require leadership to make some tough decisions in a very difficult period. And of course, it is human nature. Who gets popular by doling out unpleasant medicine? But the difficult decisions that we are making are being made to ensure that the period of difficulty would be temporary and that there would be a brighter future somewhere down the road in the not too distant future. And those difficult decisions are not. They are not, in some instances, without pain. But that pain is like medicine that is required to bring along healing as we go forward. And even as we are making some of these difficult decisions, we are not making all the difficult decisions that could be made. Because if we take the advice that we get from others who see our difficulty and tell us, add 2 and 2 and you must get 4, and that's the end of the story, they would have forgotten one of the main reasons why we were elected to office. And that is that you elected us to office, this government, under my leadership, to ensure that we do not forget that government is about people. And the decisions that we are taking, difficult as they may be, must always be concerned about the people who are impacted by those decisions. And I can tell you today, ladies and gentlemen, whatever the circumstances are in Trinidad and Tobago today, given the hand that we have been dealt, given our national circumstances, had we not been successful in doing what we have done for the last 2 years, this country would have been in a far worse situation and your individual conditions would have been far worse. You know, today I met for the second time with the labor movement. Last time I met them, they opened up the discussion by talking to me about putting a demand on the table against the wage freeze. And we had a discussion on that, and I had to point out to them, and I'll point out to you now, that the only employees in Trinidad and Tobago who are under an announced wage freeze are the parliamentarians in Trinidad and Tobago, the members of cabinet and other members of parliament. And the reason for that is that as Prime Minister, very early in the beginning of this government, I announced publicly that there will be no pay increase or upward adjustment of conditions of tenure for cabinet members and members of parliament until the economy of this country improves. That is the only group that is under a wage freeze. There are other groups who might have expectations. There's no wage freeze and downs, but there are circumstantial conditions which, even if we want to be generous or overly generous, the circumstances don't permit it. And what we set out to do is to ensure that we try to keep some food on the table, keep people in jobs, and stretch the country's ability as far as possible to allow us to move our circumstance from a national budget of $63 billion, having lost $20 billion, as you know, by earlier discussions, to see how we can easily bring our expectation and our needs and our consumption down nearer to a level where our revenue is being pitched at the moment. That is what this government is dealing with. And those are not environments within which one wins a popularity contest. But I tell you something. Against this background of being told by Labour that we are engaging in mass layoffs, let me put the national community's mind to rest on this matter. Because one of the policies that the government has pursued is, as far as we are able to, is to maintain as many public sector jobs as possible. I could tell you, the government's payroll today is the #1 priority for the Minister of Finance, trying to make that payroll every month to ensure that those who have jobs don't lose them and ensure that their families have something to go by. This is the size of the public service in Trinidad and Tobago. 89,000 people on the payroll. 89,000 people on the government's payroll in Trinidad and Tobago. Many of whom assume that your pay packet at the end of the month is guaranteed because the government has made sure that we move heaven and earth, push around, adjust, borrow, and in some instances, delay to ensure that people remain at the center of these adjustments that we are making. And what are we talking about? 39,000 civil servant members, of which you add to that another 13,000 from the protective services, police 7,000, prison 2,000, fire 2,000, 16,000 teachers, a total of 61,000 monthly paid staff. We try to keep, as far as we're able to, keep them all in jobs. We have another 22,000 daily paid workers on the government payroll and 5,500 in the defense force, giving us a total of about 89,000. So if in that environment, every so often you hear something happens and we may lose 5 jobs here, 20 jobs, 100 jobs, that in no way should create a national debate about mass layoffs and mass retrenchment. There might be some contracts that have come to an end, and based on priority or needs, we may not renew those contracts. But the bottom line is there has been no policy in this government to manage the gap between expenditure and revenue by mass retrenchment, mass layoffs, and simple reduction in the public service. That is an option which the government has not pursued, as we have not pursued a devaluation option, because these are advice that we get from some quarters, but they all have their drawbacks. Because for every person that comes off the payroll and doesn't have a job is one cog in the wheel with respect to an economy being serviced by persons who spend what they earn. That is not to say that we are not to bring our expenditure down, because what has been happening so far as a responsible government, realizing that at least in the short to medium term, that our revenues are significantly constricted. We are duty-bound during this term of office that you have given us to bring down expenditure. And all that we have done so far is to work on the expenditure side in restricting what we spend, while looking on the revenue side to see how we can grow the revenue. It is far more difficult to grow the revenue in a short space of time than it is to reduce the expenditure. But we have to do it with balance and compassion and a recognition that at the end of the day, it's all about people. And as we do that, we have put some priorities. We have kept the responsibility to ensure that projects that we met have finished, that we try and finish them. And those of you who went to the Brian Lara Stadium to see the cricket match last week, you would know that we would never have gone there for another 5 years or another 100 years had we done like the last government. We met that project 85% complete, and we completed it. Today, we have a facility that we can put to use for the purpose for which it has been done. We have a hospital in Cuba that is completed now, and we are taking steps to have sometime in the not too distant future an integration of that hospital into the national health infrastructure pattern. We are hoping, and we're still hoping, that we can get some private sector involvement in that to bring it in the health system in such a way that we don't have to rely 100% or at all on government expenditure, because government expenditure is constricted. And we're keeping an eye on 2 other hospitals which we have continued to construct. The hospital in Arima and the hospital in Point Fortin. These projects are underway at various stages. Contrary to what you might hear from misinformation along the way, those projects are proceeding apace. So in this country, in this period of restricted revenues, we are facing the possibility of having to commission and open 3 new hospitals, which means 3 sets of doctors more, 3 sets of nurses, 3 sets of other caregivers of all type, and of course an addition to the government expenditure. That is what we're looking at. We have not closed a school, we have not sent home a teacher, we have not stopped programs which we believe are central to the requirements of maintaining the basic quality of life for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Recently, this year in particular, our athletes have done particularly well in many areas of endeavor. And what we have done even in this guava season is to maintain our expenditure on our elite athletes program. We are not able to fund every athlete that has an ambition, but we have a program in place where when certain standards are met by some of our citizens, they get significant support from the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Some may say that that support is not enough. Some may say it doesn't pay all their bills. But I know that you, the taxpayer, know that that is the best that you can do at this point in time, supporting our elite athletes. And I must say, they are making our country proud. Our major objective as we try to close that gap between revenue and expenditure is that we have to maintain a public sector investment program, which means that even as we're struggling to keep those who are on the payroll, we have to find the ability to fund new projects, to create other employment opportunities as we build infrastructure and other things so that the economy can grow. Because it is only when we achieve that target of economic growth that we can then be comfortable that we are, in fact, on the right pathway, at the right pace, providing opportunity for those who want to participate and who should participate in the economy. Economic growth depends in this country on a government-funded public sector investment program to support whatever the private sector is doing, and the government proceeding to have policies and programs in place to encourage the private sector to invest. And between the government public sector investment program and the private sector, we should be creating opportunities for participation and the economic growth that we hanker after as we go forward. We would like to spend less money on our defense and our security, but the chronic crime wave in Trinidad and Tobago and the constant criminal conduct in this country demand that we continue to put that effort out there. Unfortunately, the police and other security aspects of expenditure have moved to number 2 on our priority list of expenditure. Education first, national security second, even above the national health. But health is important. But if you don't have security and safety, that too is a kind of loss of health. But I'm pleased to tell you that the efforts that we have been making with the police service and other aspects of national security under government's policy, that we are not looking to the teachers or the priests or the doctors or the nurses to carry out their duty as responsible to respond to the criminal element to protect and serve, that those efforts are beginning to bear some incipient fruits. We are beginning to see some improvement in the performance of the police. We are beginning to see some improvement in results. And only today, I have heard the police saying that they are beginning to see greater cooperation from some members of the national community, which are assisting them in getting a better result in fighting crime. We are on the right track. Crime fighting and a response to the criminal element in this country is the duty of those under the national security apparatus. If we stay the course, if we do what we have to do, not just the officers in uniform or those who are not in uniform, but the citizens themselves, in more ways than one. And tonight, I want to condemn those people in communities who attack the police when the police is carrying out law enforcement operations. And I want to say to them, if at the moment when you do that, you think that the police is your enemy, think again. Because you too, one day, 1 hour, when the criminal element turns on you, after you call out to God, you have to call out to the police. So stop that foolishness. We need a national corporation. Let me just make one more comment before I open the floor to you, because I've come to hear you as much as you come to hear me. When things are difficult, even in the household, the way to go about it is not to wail and bemoan and belabor and try to blame everybody around you. The same thing as a nation. We need to come together as a nation and to focus on our problems as a people, because the problems that we are facing are not PNM problems, UNC problems, or COP problems. They are the problems of Trinidad and Tobago. And it matters not who is in office. If we don't address those problems as national imperatives, then all we will see is a longer period of suffering and very little prospect of turning around the corner. So whatever, wherever these matters occur, let us see them as national requirements which all of us are required to play a part, matters not how small. And recently, I went to a radio station, and I was asking that radio station what I would say is the main challenge that I face as Prime Minister. And without hesitation, I could easily have said, and I said it, that if I leave this job tomorrow, I would say, when I was Prime Minister, the most difficult challenge I had in Trinidad and Tobago was the level of corruption that permeates Trinidad and Tobago as a society. And I say that tonight to make a point, that persons who engage in corrupt practice, whoever you are, wherever you are, whether you are PNM or not, you will find no solace in this PNM government. And as far as I am concerned, corruption, wherever it occurs, anywhere in Trinidad and Tobago, every person in this country must want to know who is corrupt and hold them accountable for their actions. So, that is as much as I want to say for the moment. I would like to have the floor open using the same format we used before, where you now can speak to us and we can respond to you for the next hour and 15 minutes. So thank you very much for coming out, and those of you listening at home, let's hear what you have to say to us and even what you have to say about us.
Thank you, Prime Minister. At this time, the floor is officially open for questions from our audience. You would notice there are 2 mics located in the outermost aisles. Please approach your microphone if you have a question to ask and wait to be called upon. I will indicate, and then you will state your name and the general area in which you reside before making your contribution. All right, so before you ask a question, state your name, state the area in which you reside. We want to stress that the focus tonight is on contributions to the national conversation, and we urge you to make your contributions respectful and ensure that the issues you are stressing are presented in a concise manner so that we can have as many contributions as possible. We will allow every person to make 1 comment or ask 1 brief question, and allow the other person to take the microphone to speak when they are called upon. If you would like to direct your question to a particular panelist, please indicate to whom you are directing the question before you ask the question. Just to note that we also invite our listeners and our viewers online to submit their recommendations and or questions via the CNews Live Facebook page, the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications Facebook page, or the Office of the Prime Minister Facebook page. We do have the Citizen Facilitation Manager of the OPM, who is located just outside the entrance of the hall, that can also take questions for further follow-up. So at this time, I'd like to invite the lady on my right to ask her first question.
Hi, good night. My name is Natifa Mitchell. I am from Open Gardens, Piaco. One question I have to ask is disabled people. I find we are always at we are always treated less than what we're supposed to be treated. And I will give an example. If you are seeing about anything in the social welfare division, they take very long to see about what you... So I will give an example. I see about something for 4 years now, and it's not moving at all. So I find disabled people, really and truly, who goes to that social development office are not treated the way they're supposed to be treated. And another very important question, I have been living in Open Gardens for 7 years. And the state company, TSTT, is not within our area. So they are our last resort. You get every other phone company except TSTT, and the other new areas are experiencing the same thing. So you'll need to address TSTT coming within the area to set up phone lines. So that is something I want to be addressed.
Okay.
And no postal service. Please, we need postal service.
Thank you.
Excuse me, you did say there was something that wasn't addressed for 4 years. I missed that. What was that?
That was the TT card, 4 years now.
Your what?
TT card, food card.
Food card.
Yes, 4 years now.
Okay. We do have some persons who are taking account of what you have said, and we will ensure that the relevant government department, you've identified TSTT, and I'm sure that we will get that request to them for those new developments to be accelerated into the business package. Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
We'll take the gentleman to my left.
Good night. Honorable Prime Minister and Ministers, welcome, and good night to all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Prime Minister, I was very glad when you said that governance, at least from your vantage point, is about people. Mr. Prime Minister, there are upwards of 200,000 citizens in Trinidad and Tobago who are suffering for housing. There are some of them on the HDC list for 40 years, and some of them more. Some people who have qualified when they were in their 20s, some of them have been cross 60s now, where they can no longer accomplish the dream of owning a home. I would like to know what, in your capacity as the Prime Minister, and of course in your former capacity as a housing minister, having an intimate knowledge of the housing woes in this country, what are you planning to do, or what would you direct your Minister of Housing to look into when it comes to this lottery system that the government claims, or the HDC claims, it uses as a tool of allocation of these houses? Thank you very much.
Well, the whole question of the availability of housing is one which we are trying to bring about some readjustment. You identified me as a former housing minister. When I went into the Ministry of Housing in 2003, there were a couple tens of thousands of applicants. In fact, I was told that the application list was 40,000. But by the time we cleaned it up, it was a bit less than that. Today, the HDC is reporting that there are 120,000 applicants for public sector housing. There's no way that the government could undertake to house that scale of people in any reasonable or any time frame at all, because the government's program cannot replace in totality the requirement for housing that exists in every family. When I was housing minister, we had one of the most aggressive housing programs in the country, and was able to fund it at that time. We were spending about $2 billion a year in housing, and we had just over 21,000 housing starts, and that was a very aggressive program. Today, we don't have that $2 billion, and if we are able to do 4,000 or 5,000 houses a year, that would be, within the current circumstances, a very good program. So you should understand how much our ability to satisfy that need of a completed house or apartment to those who have it. So what we have been doing is refocusing the HDC's ability to provide housing to those, mainly to those who need it most. The first thing we did was to lower the qualification level so that persons of higher income, like $45,000 a month and $30,000 a month, that those persons would seek to find their housing in the private sector. What that means is that whatever little money we have in the HDC, in the public sector program, would focus more on providing houses for persons with a lower income, giving them a better chance of getting a house. We also have brought back, recently, the cabinet approved, that we will go back to a program that worked very well for us in the past when we didn't have a lot of money, and that is the aided self-help program, where persons would be assisted to build their own homes with some assistance from the government. We do have a number of areas around the country where we have building lots upon which the government cannot find the money to build houses, but the government can make those lots available to persons who can use their own means and start a housing effort within their family and house themselves. So we're going back to that. And more importantly, where we have had abandoned projects against the demand that you've mentioned, for example, in Valse, right in the middle of the East-West corridor, we had 408 apartments and houses there, which have been left abandoned for the entire period of the UNC's term. Yet, as we go now and we have started to complete those houses, we have committed a contract of $114 million to the contractor to return to the site to finish those houses. We are being accused of mamagaing people who are looking for houses in the housing program. We are finishing all the incomplete houses to make them available to persons who look to the HDC for housing. Whether it's in St. James, in Chaguanas, in Valsain, in Arima, in Point Fortin, wherever they are, part of the immediate priority is to complete that which we have embarked upon before. And we are still looking at the Ministry of Finance for ways and means to fund a continuation of housing for those persons who are least able to approach the private market.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Just a reminder to state your name and the area you reside in before you ask your question.
Hi,
Lady
good
on the
night,
right.
everybody. I'm Michelle Leacock. I'm from Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. Good night to the Honorable Randall Mitchell. A special good night to you and Mr. Stuart Young. Mr. Garcia, this question is for you. I have a son attending Tranquility Government Primary. Since 2015, we have a problem with the air condition, right? This is the second week for the school term, and he has brought a note home stating that school is still over in 1:30 because the air condition has not fixed. Yeah, some had fixed and some didn't fix. The teachers are not coming out because it's uncomfortable to teach these children under that environment, right? And Woodbrook Government Secondary, I have been promised a 6th phone since 4 years now, and no work has done on Woodbrook Government Secondary for the July-August vacation. Okay? Thank you very much.
All right. Let me respond to your first question. Relates to the Tranquility Government Primary School and the air-conditioned unit. That school has been under the supervision of the EFCN in terms of repairs and maintenance. The air conditioning in that school has broken down on several occasions, but we at the Ministry of Education have provided all the expertise that was necessary to ensure that that school was able to function. I keep saying that one of the pillars upon which this government and this Ministry of Education builds is that we need to have access to ensure that our children have access. And even if it becomes a bit uncomfortable, where children have to be dismissed at 1:30, the important thing is that we are affording the students the opportunity of accessing an education. I want to give you the assurance that EFCL, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, both agencies are working to solve that problem. In the meanwhile, it is important for us to ensure that the children have access to education. The other question with respect to Woodbrook Secondary and the sixth form block. That is a school that has been given a lot of attention, not only by the Ministry of Education, but by the parents. I've been meeting with the principal regularly, and the problem with that school is the fact that when we came into office, we found that the contractor had stopped work, and he had stopped work because he was not paid. When we came into office, we found that there were a number of schools that were in several stages of completion where the contractors had stopped work because they were not paid. That happened before we came into office. You rightly stated that for the past 4 years, that situation exists. It is therefore not solely the fault of this government, but I want to assure, as I have assured the school population when I spoke to them recently, that we will do everything so that that sixth form block will be completed in a short space of time.
Thank you, Minister Garcia. Let's take a question from the left.
Good evening, Honorable Prime Minister, other ministers of government, residents of St. Augustine, and the wider public. My name is Avinash Maharaj. I reside at El Dorado, but I'm here representing the employees of the Agricultural Development Bank. I am an employee of the Agricultural Development Bank, but I'm also the chairman of the PSA ADB section for the employees of the bank. I want to inform you that we are subsisting on 2010 salaries, and we are in 2017. It's unsustainable. We have suffered 7 years without an increase. I know that in this time of need, people are thinking, where's the money coming from? The money, I assure you, is not coming from the state. It's coming from coffers of the bank. We have been assured by the management of the bank. Our chairman, Mr. Rada, is here in the audience. He can attest to this. They have been making this presentation to employees for the last 2 years. The money has been set aside by the bank to pay these increases, 14% increases to the employees, and yet we are being denied this. We have been offered 9% in March of this year. We rejected that because all public servants were given 14% for the period 2011 to 2013. We have the funds set aside at the bank to pay the 14%, but we're not getting it. Since March till now, we have not heard anything about our increases. What is going on? We ask on the Minister of Finance to please convene a meeting of the Human Resource Advisory Committee to just give us the signature to pay the 14%. We're not asking for the money from the state. We're just asking for signatures and approval to pay the 14% increase that is already at the bank. Monies that farmers would have paid through paying interest, through paying fees on their loans that have been recovered by the employees doing their work. This money is set aside in an account at the bank.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think we get it.
We just need some resolution, please. I mean, we are in limbo for so long.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We get it just of it.
I understand your situation, and I will ask the Minister of Finance to look into it. If the money is there in the bank to do it, but please don't say it's not money from the state, it's the state bank. Okay? Say it's not there it's not coming from the treasury. But as far as I recall, the ADB is 100% state-owned. So whether the money is in the bank or it's coming from the treasury, it's state money. But if you are saying that there is money in the bank's operations to pay you, that's different. And I give you the assurance that the government will look into it in short order. Thank you very much for making the case.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
But as I said, we have been in limbo for a long time.
You
We could get resolution by
the case.
the end of September, end of the financial year, we'd be very grateful.
You're a very good advocate. You've made the case. Right?
Thank you. To the gentleman to the left.
Good evening, Prime Minister Rowley.
Good evening, sir.
And panelists, all protocol observed. My name is Stanley P. Jones. I'm a resident of the St. Joseph constituency. Now, Prime Minister Rowley, we talk about diversification. But as far as I see, there's more talk, but limited action. A few weeks ago on television, I observed that you were in the process of opening the Caranage fishing complex. I welcome that. I have been to Grenada about a month ago. In Guave, they have a fish fry. We see a lot, I observe a lot of tourists here. Things are going good. I've been to St. Lucia, I went to Gosile, Anslarai every Friday, something going on. Well, Barbados, is it? Oystins Fish Market. Busybody on Fridays. So, I would like you to look into it. My question to you is, when can we expect the fishing complex in Caranage to be opened?
Well, I'm glad that a resident of St. Joseph is paying attention to the fishing market in Caranage. And when you saw me there, I wasn't about to open it. We have just restarted the construction because that project has been left incomplete and idle for the last 6 years. And what we have done, we've restarted the project. And it is our expectation that that project will be completed by the end of December, or is it March? I think it's March we're aiming for. And when it is completed, the intention is to have it contribute to the local and the national economy in the same way that you mentioned at Anse-Lanceray, Lucia, and Oystins in Barbados, where the community can have economic activity based on the sea, and we are combining that with culture, so it's a place to spend time. And in the Western Peninsula, there's so many people partying down there, and very soon, by the middle of next year, we expect that the Caranage Fish Market, Fish Fry and Bandstand would be a household name in Trinidad and Tobago. That is the part of the economy we're working towards.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
But it has been left abandoned for under the last administration, and even under this difficult situation, as I said earlier on, we are trying to complete all these projects so they can play the role that you have just identified. That's one little contribution to diversification.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we have an audience on Facebook who is also asking questions, and at this time, we would like to take a question that's coming off of the Facebook feed. This question comes from Ray Graves. How does the ministry think a company can assist in improving the SEA results of poorly performing schools in one of its fence line communities? May I ask that again?
Say it again.
And I believe this is directed towards the Education Minister. How does the ministry think a company can assist in improving the SEA results of poorly performing schools in one of its fence line communities?
Well, first of all, I don't understand what is meant by the fence line communities.
Near the ministry, near the school.
Sorry?
Communities around.
The communities around the school have been told by the Prime Minister. I can tell you that at the Ministry of Education, we are doing everything that is possible to improve the performance of students in the SEA exam. I mentioned earlier that we have initiated what we refer to as the Form 1 initiative, and that is the students who have performed under 30% and are above the age of 13 years, they are sent to the secondary schools, and we have a special curriculum that will ensure that their numeracy and literary skills are enhanced, and that will allow them to proceed in the secondary school. In the primary school, those students who have scored below 30% but are below the age of 13, we will be putting in place certain measures in the primary school so that they will be better able to deal with the exams. And some of the measures that we have put in place would be ensuring that our teachers are adequately trained and monitored. We have in place what we call a school-based management system that will include all actors in the education system. The school supervisors will be visiting the schools regularly. Our curriculum officers will be visiting the schools and working with the teachers to ensure that the curriculum is implemented in accordance with what is standard practice. And of course, our principals and our heads of departments and our deans will all be engaged to ensure that our students have the requisite support that will allow them to perform to the best of their ability. In some instances, particularly in primary schools, we are going to do some diagnostic testing because there are some students who suffer from learning disabilities, and we want to ensure that we get to the bottom of it so that we can provide the necessary support. And with this, we have engaged our Student Support Services Division so that they can provide the necessary help for our students.
If I may be permitted, Madam Chair, to add to what the Minister has said, particularly in the context of fence line contribution. A few months ago, I think it was last year, I made a plea to the national community to embrace volunteerism, particularly in a time of straitened circumstances. And if you live next to a school and you have a particular skill, whether it is an art, culture, or literature, whatever it is, and you believe that you can contribute something to those students who are going into that school, there's nothing to prevent you from walking into the school and walking up to the principal or the teacher and say, listen, I would like to help by contributing this or that to the school. And you form a group, and the next thing you know, you have a very good program in the school led by someone from the community who volunteered to do something in that community. I hold that out to Trinidad and Tobago at this time.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Minister Garcia. Let's have the question from the gentleman in blue.
Good evening, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, his cabinet colleagues, and the rest of the people in Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Anstey L. Payne. My main focus is technical vocational education in Trinidad and Tobago.
Could you tell us what area you come from?
I came from Couva South. In the 1950s, we had developed an education system, technical education system, by way of the San Fernando Technical Institute and the John Donaldson Technical Institute. We had a flourishing apprenticeship system throughout Trinidad and Tobago. When I look around now, I see that there are problems throughout when we look at the energy sector, problems, and I'm certain the root cause would be lack of technical training and experience. When I look at the shipping industry, I'm seeing problems, and that is mainly, in my view, a lack of technical education and training. I am asking, what are the plans for the development of technical vocational education in Trinidad and Tobago? And when I say development, I'm not talking about more of the people doing welding and more of the people doing mechanics. I'm talking about vertical development. Why? Since 1950s to now, and we have so many vehicles, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have not sent people to do automotive engineering degrees. That is what I'm talking about. Vertical development. You do an apprenticeship, you develop from there, and then you are now given scholarships to go on and do degrees in the technical area. UTT, when UTT came, I was jumping happy because I was saying, now we're going to get technical education and training being developed. But I am not seeing that. Please tell me your plans for technical vocational education and training.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. I am very happy to know that you are still involved in the area of technical vocational education because you know both of us worked in that same area for a number of years and your interest remains. Thank you very much. I want to let you know and let the audience know that we are very much concerned about the growth of technical vocational education in this country. I don't want to go back on what happened previously, but we know this area was one of the areas that was sorely neglected by the previous administration. We have been working very hard with our technical vocational institutions. For example, the Metal Industry Company, Institution of Technology, MIC-IT. They are working so that they will be able to produce persons who have the requisite skills to ensure that the technical vocational sector is well in hand. Right now, as I speak, there are some 25 persons from the MIC IT institution who are in Germany who are pursuing a course of training that will allow them to come back and give to the population, to the country of Trinidad and Tobago, their expertise so that we can develop. We have different stages of technical vocational education, and in terms of YTEP, YTEP deals with the first and second levels of technical vocational education. We are giving YTEP the necessary support so that they can produce the type of students and the type of persons who will be able to deal with some of those programs. You spoke about the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and we have the UTT in San Fernando, and we have UTT, what was formerly John Donaldson Technical Institute, and people are pursuing courses, and we have introduced a number of courses that will allow our students to blossom in this area. I want to dispel the rumor or the feeling that many people have, and that is that technical vocational education and training is for those persons who are duncy. That is far from the truth. I was about to say myself is a classic example, but I wouldn't say that. Except to say that in terms of technical vocational education, this government and this ministry has been doing everything within the last 2 years to ensure that technical education training is put on the front burner. And Mr. Payne, I will invite you to come to my office so that we can continue the dialogue that we have been having over the years in an effort to learn from your experience. Thank you very much.
Minister, I think what the gentleman is saying, if I may speak for him, is that having a minister who has a background and such eminent record in technical vocational education, they expect a bit more from you in this area as minister. Is that reasonable?
That is reasonable, very reasonable.
We have a minister with tech background, and we say no more for the evening. Carpentry.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Honorable Prime Minister and members of the head table. I want to express my thanks for all the efforts the government is making to improve our lives. There are just one or two things I wanted to touch on very quickly. The first has to do with my concern about the economic sustainability of our economy. For the last couple of years, we keep getting deficit budgets, and I know that the gap is being filled with tapping into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund as well as borrowing. I'm very concerned about how that is affecting our long-term macroeconomic viability. The other quick point, it seems that there is an uncontrolled migration into Trinidad and Tobago. I am very much for our commitments in terms of refugees and so on, but definitely not when it comes to economic migrants. We will have long-term crime and so on implications for that. And finally, with respect to disaster preparedness, we seem to have over decades a lot of squatting going on in Trinidad. It's something that bothers me. I'm an environmental science teacher, and I'm very concerned that with respect to the seismic hazards, the meteorological hazards, what are we doing? So maybe the Minister of Works and your good self, Mr. Prime Minister, can shed some light in trying to minimize that potential danger that we are facing.
At the end of your question, could you just give us your name and what area you're coming from?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sochan Laltu, I am from Aruca.
Thank you.
Let me try to address the first part of your question with respect to the economy and the borrowings to maintain our lifestyle. The problem that we're dealing with now is not something that we can reasonably fix overnight here without significant dislocation. What has happened is that when we were experiencing a period of good times, let's say 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, that period, the basis of that prosperity had looked long-term. When we were getting a good revenue flow in after we became a gas exporter, we were all of the view, including the international community in the business in which we were engaged, hydrocarbons, that gas had a future at a certain level. And we pitched our expenditure based on a potential earning going forward. And suddenly, that picture changed when the prospect of that earning virtually disappeared overnight. In 2008, it was the year of the highest revenue earning for the government of Trinidad and Tobago. We had a decent volume of gas going out, and we also had bumper prices for gas, and we had basically secure markets for gas. Those three conditions changed almost overnight. One, we found ourselves very quickly in a shortage of gas and gas supply. Two, the price collapsed from $10 or $12 per unit to less than $3 per unit. And thirdly, a market which was secure for us, or appeared to be secure, we suddenly find that the people who were selling gas to, they are now out in the world competing with us, selling gas in markets that we could possibly take. So those three conditions wipe out for us this prospect of a high revenue earning going into our medium term. And instead of becoming richer based on our resources, we have now to turn around and try to throttle back our expenditure, our expectation, and our consumption to a level of revenue which is much lower. And that is what, unfortunately, is the lot of this government today. What we have been doing so far is to try to make the adjustments in such a way that we don't collapse the economy and destroy the society. And to do that, it means that we have been borrowing some money, but we can't, as you pointed out, just keep borrowing to fund our lifestyle. Think of it in your household. If you have lost your job, or you've suffered a significant reduction in your pay, you cannot then continue to live the way you were living. You might have to go to the cinema a little less. You may have to eat one banana less. You may have to buy one new pants less. And you may have to focus on the children rather than your own wants. You have to prioritize. Same thing as a country. And unfortunately, in this period that we have the wheel of the country, the administration today, that is the assignment that we have. We could be irresponsible and borrow to be popular and wreck the country and destroy the country. This is not what we elected us to do. I think the Minister...
So I can take the second part of the question. I share your concerns. I have been to 36 of the 39 constituencies in Trinidad over the last 10 months. And one problem is common, is flooding. A significant contributing factor to the flooding is man-made. A lot of the residents, residential house developers, and a lot of commercial activities, what we find happening is most of the water course is being blocked. And it's all being blocked in order to maximize land use. That is a serious problem that we faced with. Coupled with that is some of the squatting settlements that has no proper infrastructure. And in most instances, these squatting areas are low-lying areas, which normally will be prone to flooding. What I intend to do is to work closely with the Minister of Planning and the local government representative, the regional corporations through the Minister of Rural Development. As a country, we have to get very serious in terms of obeying the laws in Trinidad and Tobago. Fortunately, we have not gotten any major disaster. But what we see happening around the world, we need to put our house in order, and we need to start as citizens here to be more responsible as to where we build and how we build.
Thank you.
Take one more question on this side.
Pleasant good night, Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Education, Minister of Works. Prime Minister, I must commend you on that decision you made in 2015, when even before any minister was elected and we had gone to the polls, you appointed Minister Garcia, Minister of Education. That was a decision well placed.
Thank you very much.
And I applaud you when you identified him as a tech work teacher. Having come through the junior secondary school system, Mount Hope Junior Sec started in 1972. We were the first batch. I was a part of the first batch. And the TechVoc teacher is now Minister of Education. He started his career at Five Rivers Junior Sec, where he imposed the title as the best woodman in the world. Mr. Minister, I'm asking you, Mount Hope Secondary School, 6 years, standing there as an edifice, incomplete. This year, the alumni is celebrating 45 years. And we are asking that Mount Hope Secondary School be completed. Secondly, Minister of Works, I heard you with some very tremendous programs coming on stream. I heard you talk about competitive tendering. There's also a tendering called PBQ, something you would know about. There's also, in the contracting industry, the large, the small, and the deprived contractors. I would like very much that you consider not only large and small, but the deprived contractors. I'm sure many are here tonight. Because what the competitive tendering does, while it brings some yield, it also puts in place large contractors who have subsidiary companies going into tender, 4 and 5 of them coming out of one industry, tendering on one project. So it's himself on to himself.
Thank you, sir.
I would like you to visit that situation.
Okay, let me respond to that. Clearly, that has been a practice in the past and is something that we're paying close attention to. What we have asked is that a lot of these smaller contractors to please get registered. I have had a lot of contractors come in to me and say, well, you know, we're not getting jobs, you're not getting jobs. But they're not even registered. They're not registered in the proper organizations where the Ministry of Works and Transport, where I can speak for, we normally use NIPDEC and NITCO. And what I ask the contractors to do is to go to these organizations and register. What we are trying to do is that when we have community projects, to try to get community contractors and give them the first option. What we definitely will be doing, we will not allow the bigger contractors to go for the smaller jobs. And it is easy to find out who are the players behind the contractors. And we are doing work on that. So what you'll find is that we will be doing investigation on contractors when we see the names coming up. And we recognize, look, this is just a part of a bigger entity. They should not be competing with the smaller ones. But having said that, I just want to reiterate, what we're looking for is value for money.
Thank you, Minister Sinanan.
Yes, I want to respond to that gentleman who started off his discourse by praising me and ended by criticizing me. I want to give you the assurance that the Mount Hope Secondary School is on the front burner for attention. I know that those schools have been left unattended for some time now. And again, as I said before, we came and we met a situation where a number of our schools were left unattended simply because the contractors had stopped work. But what had happened is that under the previous administration, there was this pasha of school building without ensuring that the required funds are available. So they just went willy-nilly and they constructed schools without the financial support. More than that, there was that high level of corruption that was associated with the school building program. We looked at one school in South, a primary school that came in for $76 million for a primary school. We said we'll have none of that. So I want to assure you, sir, that Mount Hope Secondary School, the former Mount Hope Junior Secondary School, will receive our attention, and in fact we have it down for early attention in financial year 2017-2018.
Thank you, Minister Garcia. I would like to indicate at this time, ladies and gentlemen, that it is just after 9:30, and we do have a segment up to 10:05 for questions. And so at this time, we're going to close the lines. So we're asking that nobody else joins the line, which means that we have 6 people on my left and 8 on my right. And just to remind you, we have 7 on my left and 8 on my right. And just to remind you that there is the Citizens Facilitation desk just outside the entrance. So if there are questions that you want to ask, you can lodge them there as well, and your concerns will be addressed. I want to ask the remaining persons in the lines for questions to be as concise as you can so that we can make it through as many of you as possible at this time. Taking the gentleman on my right.
Good night to the head table. Good night to the head table. My name is Kurt Lejean from Tunapuna.
Sir, we are not hearing you clearly at all.
Good night to the head table. All protocols observed. I'm Kurt Lejean from Tunapuna. I would like to raise the issue of MTS. MTS of late, employees are complaining of monies deducted from their salaries to send to credit unions, and they're sent 4 months after, and other complaints of problems of industrial action. I have a complaint I would like to read to register to you on the behalf of Ms. Michelle Raymond. If you would allow me, I would be brief.
As briefly as you can,
right.
sir. Thank you.
So, I, Michelle Raymond, of the above address,
So
employee H974 at the appointed time was working at the Tunapuna Magistrate Complex. Since January 2016, I was recalled to headquarters to answer some allegations made against me by Susan Toussaint and other co-workers. On Tuesday...
Sir, could we ask you, in the interest of time and to ensure that we get the gist of the letter,
right,
could we ask you to lodge that with the desk outside so we can really get a chance to examine the circumstances?
Thank you.
President, good night, Honorable Prime Minister, Ministers. My name is Sean Clark and I'm from Caroni West. Just a few questions for the Prime Minister.
So we can take one question. So if you can give us your most pertinent
I'll
one.
break it down in one question into three. With regards to the oil scandal that is taking place right now.
What?
The fake oil scandal that is taking place right now. Do you believe that Avery Drilling should repay the money owes to Petrotrin? And do you believe an investigation should be carried out with regards to the fake oil scandal?
Thank you.
From what I've seen so far, the statements are statements that should be of concern to all citizens. And certainly a thorough investigation is required. And I expect that we have just put a new board into Petrotrin last Friday. A board of very competent people. And I expect that the board will get independent investigators to thoroughly investigate that matter. And if there is any area of corruption and or incompetence, then the board would have to take the rectifying action. That is what we have put a new board there for, to deal with any and all aspects of wrongdoing or incompetence at Petrotrin, because we want to make Petrotrin the company that can deliver on the promise of being an oil company, that can deliver to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. With respect to a lot of the scandalization that is taking place around it, I simply want to say one thing, that if you really want to get something out of an investigation to ensure that whoever is responsible is held accountable, then what you don't want is to convert it into political scandal and foolishness. I have a statement to make, and I think I made it earlier on tonight, that no person in Trinidad and Tobago, whether you're PNM or not, you will find no protection or solace at the PNM's doorstep. We're protecting no one with corrupt action in Trinidad and Tobago. Whether you are friend or foe, we provide protection for no one. But having said that, we expect that proper processes will apply to ensure that we get to those, any and all persons who have made Trinidad and Tobago the infamous place that it is supposed to be, in some people's view, where corruption is a way of life. We have to have proper processes. This particular matter that you mentioned, we are awaiting the outcome of proper investigations and confirmations.
And will the daughter
Thank
of
you, Prime
AV
Minister.
drilling,
Sir?
will the daughter of AV drilling be suspended until the investigation
Sir,
is being
you can lodge
conducted?
your further question outside. We
I
need to
want to
move
answer
on.
that question. Let me ask you a question. On what basis will the daughter of AV drilling be suspended?
Because of her father is affiliated with, she's affiliated with the company.
And
That
you
is being investigated right now.
He is being investigated. And you, think the daughter should be suspended?
I'm asking you the question, Your Honor.
That doesn't sound to me as though they're connected. Unless, of course, you are making an allegation against the daughter.
I'm not, sir. I'm just asking you a question.
Well, I have said I do not find that that is a reasonable conclusion to come to.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Got the question from this side.
A pleasant good evening. My name is Nikolai Edwards, and I reside at St. John's Road. Now, my question is to your government. How important is giving the youth of this country the agency required in the determination of their future and development and the country at large? Now, having continuous interaction with youth across this country has led me to the supported view that not enough is being done by the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs to support young people in terms of adding to national development and youth development in general. We've lost out on many opportunities in recent months, hosting opportunities, and I want to say that I personally think that the youth portfolio should be given to the Ministry of Education so that the bureaucracy will not be as much in terms of engaging young people. Also, Mr. Prime Minister, I would like to humbly request that you meet with youth leaders across this country, including myself, so that we can abreast you of what exactly is youth development and how adding value to young people's life would more or less involve the entire country being developed in the way that we want to.
Thank you.
Well, I think having closed on that last sentence of yours, I don't think anybody can argue with that. Adding value to young people's lives. It is the raising of the young people that guarantees the future of the country. And I would like to look at it a little differently from your perspective. I wouldn't say that nothing is being done or not enough is being done. I would say that a lot is being done. But of course, there are limits to what we can do. And we are doing a fair amount, and there is room for more given the resources, and we want to ensure that the resources that we are putting out for young people are having the desired results. As a matter of fact, again, I wouldn't agree with you that we have lost out on many opportunities for young people. On the contrary, I think we have gained a number of opportunities. Only last 2 months ago, the minister traveled to China and got opportunities for young people in China that will be for the first time. We can enter some Chinese programs there to put us on the world stage in certain kinds of activities. In terms of performance in sport and in education and in culture, our young people are doing quite well in many areas, but there is room for further expansion and further improvement.
And just
Thank
to
you,
the
Prime
second
Minister.
the second part that was asked, would you be willing to entertain such a meeting with the youth leaders? Because I do think that it is very important.
I would be very happy to consider your invitation as soon as I receive it, sir.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we have a question from our Facebook audience. And this is coming from Shay Roberts. Is crime correlated to the economic downturn? How do we, as a people, get the assistance from the government to reduce this consistent upsurge?
Well, as chairman of the National Security Council, I think that question is for me. There is some relationship between some people's involvement with crime and their social and economic circumstances. But one cannot say that crime is related to economic downturn. Because if that was so, when we have a period of prosperity, we ought to see a dramatic reduction in crime. we did not see that. As a matter of fact, on the contrary, the upsurge of sustained criminal conduct in Trinidad and Tobago has been mirrored by our period of prosperity. So one cannot say that crime is an outcome of the downturn. It's like saying that poverty causes crime. Yes, in some people's way of life, it does. But there are very many people, I think the majority of people who experience poverty do not automatically turn into criminals. And with respect to assistance that you can get from the government, there are a number of programs which, not the least of which are programs aimed at strengthening the family, programs aimed at creating opportunities for the dispossessed, and those programs have the potential to steer one away from selecting crime as a way of life to make ends meet. In fact, only yesterday I saw a very simple program in one of our communities, a program of parenting. It was in the papers, a number of persons, I think males and female, took part in a program led by one of our ministries focusing on the simple matter of parenting. And I thought to myself, if we could do more of this and save even one child from going the wrong way, then we're on the right track.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Let's see the gentleman to the left.
Pleasant good night to the head table. Sorry. All due respect to the head table and to the audience, love and great consideration. Dr. Keith Rowley, are you aware that the only entity with authority to take life in the country ought to be the state, and that ought not to be surrendered to criminals? Are you aware?
Thank you, sir.
No, I'm not finished. I came here to speak, and I find that gross contempt to treat the people in this
Please continue.
You all supposed to put one of these podium here for us to talk to you. The doctor called for talk, but I came to speak. I have some documents here I would like to ask. Doctor, I have a thing here, a book here. All remember clause section 34. Is this turned to witch hunt now? No, but that is not what I want to talk to you about. I want to speak to you about crime. When the police hold a person and put him in the jail, all his rights is supposed to be suspended. He has no rights again, you know. He has to prove that he's innocent. If he cannot prove he's innocent, he's guilty. Your duty is to see that these people who is paid to... Are you aware that all those who are paid to do a job that they are not doing the job becomes a thief? Are you aware of that, sir? You ought to know that. The prison turkeys and them calling on you all for help. All you're helping them at all. You aware of that, sir? What are you all doing about that? Are you aware that Trinidad acquired independence through legal, civilized and educational means without bloodshed? How could someone stop in a quiet in America and say Trinidad have more terrorists than the 7 states in Afghanistan? How could they say that? And you all said nothing to defend us? Nothing to defend us? Do you know that Trump and them, what them doing? Them could come down and blow down oil well and say the terrorists do it and come kill innocent people here. You all supposed to defend us. Our welfare and security is not taken care of by you all. And I wouldn't go no further, but I come here to ask a set of question because Faris Al-Rawi tell us that
I think
1 million thing is jammed in this thing. What are you doing about that?
I think
Sir, we're going to answer your questions. Thank you.
Your quota. But let me just respond to 2 points that you made. One, I don't think that you are right when you say that once a person is arrested, they have no rights. Citizens in Trinidad and Tobago have rights even in the prison. So let's stop that idea. Secondly, it is not correct to say that we have been accused of having more criminals, more terrorists than Afghanistan, and we said nothing. On the contrary, we very vigorously defended Trinidad and Tobago's position in quarters where such statements have been made. We have no control over what other people say about us. What we have control over is what we do here in Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that whatever negatives they say about us cannot be confirmed as true. And when we were accused by an American expert of having more terrorists, we took issue publicly and internationally on that. Because we suffer as a small country from people making statements about us. I mean, we have not had, thank God and knock wood, the kinds of terrorist interventions that took place in Belgium and Spain and France. But of course, nobody issues travel advisories about those countries. But we are subjected to one every Monday morning because people feel less safe if they come to our place, and they feel more safe if they are in Barcelona or if they are in Paris. It's a fact of life. But we just have to hold our ground, demand our respect, and earn it by having self-respect as a nation. So I know you would have liked to have read all the books, but I like your spirit. But just remember that there are rights which apply even in situations where persons have been condemned to death.
Thank you, Prime Minister. The gentleman in the green.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jonathan St. Louis Nahus, and I'm the president of the University of the West Indies St. Augustine Guild of Students.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. So the GATE program has helped to create a competent and skilled workforce, but many of the students who graduate still find that they face a hard time getting employment. So we have a hard time finding employment after graduating, despite using our country's resources to educate ourselves. So one of the most critical areas that we see this happening in is medical sciences students and agriculture students. So what are our plans for addressing the high level of unemployment and underemployment in tertiary level graduates? And what can we do to encourage entrepreneurship?
Well, all of that is tied up with the quest for economic growth. If the economy is growing and requiring skills of a wide range, then persons who have prepared themselves to provide those skills will more easily get jobs. Where you have an economic downturn, one of the consequences of that is that economic growth is not there, and that the opportunities for participation are reduced. But in the case you mentioned, people in the medical field, this is a matter that came to my attention recently as to why we are having so many doctors saying that they're unemployed, but you go to the hospital and they tell you that we are short of so many doctors. What I found out was that there are doctors and doctors. There are different levels of professional requirements. And the positions in the medical supply and the public service are not available to everybody who graduated last week or last month or last year. But also, many of those doctors don't even consider opening a practice on their own as they can in a community which needs the doctor. The unavailability of jobs sometimes simply means unavailability of government jobs. As a matter of fact, I had a mother who complained to me recently about her daughter not being employed, a doctor. And the reason was that she couldn't get the public sector. When I inquired into the matter, what I found out was that some doctors were actually saying they're not working outside of Port of Spain. Some of them saying they're not working outside the East-West corridor. And some doctors have been saying they're not working in areas where they believe that they're criminals. So they were laying down terms and conditions for their employment that I found quite strange. Long ago, when I grew up, there were doctors in the rural communities with their own offices coming out to the people and building up a practice. And later on, they become substantial doctors at the national level. That is not happening today. We have to make a distinction between jobs and government jobs. And the other point you made was?
Well, actually, while we're on the subject of medical science students, I want to encourage you to take a visit to the Mount Hope facilities where med-sci students study. It's really in a deplorable condition. I think they are under the supervision of the NCRHA. And I would encourage you to...
Are you saying here that medical conditions are in deplorable state?
Correct. The environment that the students have to study in. And I think that's very discouraging, and I think that attitude could be carried into their careers later on. So I think it needs to be addressed from now. If you could pay some attention to that, I would really appreciate it.
Well, I certainly will raise it at the appropriate quota. I'm surprised to hear that because, as you quite correctly said, if the area of training is of that nature, it might become the area of practice or the kind of practice. We don't want that at all. So I will raise it in the appropriate quarter.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking part.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Let's take a question from the lady in the left.
A pleasant good evening to Honorable Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, as well as the public. My question is, as you mentioned earlier, that low-income houses, what your government is focused on, then please inform us, what do you consider as low income? Because households that make 7,000 to 10,000 a month are not considered low income. Far less for the people who is making less than that. Also, it was brought to my attention that once you are paying a loan, you cannot acquire a mortgage from HDC. That is something I would like to be cleared up, because if we are renting and we are paying a loan, I think it is also, should be applicable that we could pay a mortgage and still afford to pay a loan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what I do know is that we are trying to make many more units available to persons at the lower income level. In Trinidad and Tobago, when you speak of low income, in the housing context, you're talking about people who can pay a rental or a mortgage in the order of $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 a month. Because that's what it is in Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why we're saying that the demand is far outstripping the supply. And that will generate a permanent frustration unless we find other opportunities for such persons to be housed. What has been happening is that there has been a huge move in expectation in the national community that persons would look to the state for housing and no other area. And now you have about 120,000 applications for 5,000 houses. So we have to try and expand the availability, and right now we are currently considering how we can encourage the private sector, once again, to get involved in the provision of housing for the national demand.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Let me say at this point that it is just about 9:55, and at 10:05, the last question will be asked. So if there are any remaining members in the line who would not have been able to ask their questions, again, we refer you to the Citizen Facilitation Unit that is located just outside the door, and they'll be able to take your comments or your questions if you do not get a chance to ask them at this point in time. And so we implore to be as concise as possible.
Honorable Prime Minister and Ministers, my name is Deborah Maharaj Newling, and I'm from Port of Spain. However, I have operated a private secondary and tertiary school here in Curepe/St. Augustine for 20 years.